Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Consumer Protection Program. I'm attorney Carmen DeLutri and it's my distinct pleasure today to have with me attorney David Lampley. You may be wondering why we've changed the format of the show and we have this map of Florida behind us. Pretty simple. Today we're going to be talking for the next half hour about the BP oil spills and the claims process. There's a lot of buzz going around right now, and if you own a business or you've worked in the hospitality industry in some way, shape, or form, you've probably been getting a lot of solicitations from lawyers, many of which are out of state or from some other place, many of which have not even complied with the Florida bar rules. But what you're doing is kind of get people to lock into this. BP oil spill claims are kind of considered like a mass tort claim because it affected so many people up the state of Florida and in and out Louisiana and Alabama and Mississippi. However, if you want to make a claim, there's a specific process you have to go through. I brought Dave down because he's heading up our team at the firm who's going to help people make those claims the right way as opposed to just filing paperwork willy-nilly, which is going to be rejected. The reason we decided to get into this is because we've talked to a lot of business owners whose claims were rejected by BP, and it was either because of the claims process, they didn't fill out their paperwork correctly, they didn't properly document it, they didn't properly support their claim. Now, if you're looking over here, I'm going to ask Dave to, well, number one, say hi and tell us what he's got here.
Hi, everybody. Well, this is a portion of the documentation that is related to the BP oil spill claim. In fact, this is less than half of the documents that relate to the class action settlement that was proposed and accepted, and it is now kind of the framework that makes up how we file these cases. The BP oil spill claim can essentially be broken down into four different areas, if you want to call them that. You have a business economic, you have a business that failed during that time, you have a business that had started up during that time. So a business that doesn't have the historical data going back years and years and years, but still nevertheless was affected by the spill because they opened their doors either in late 2009 or 2010. And then you have the individual claims. And those individual claims can range to almost anybody. Those that are especially affected were those that worked in the hospitality industry, hotels, restaurants, tourism, even taxi drivers and things of that nature. But it's also any individual that had their hours cut because of the spill. One of the big questions that I get when I'm first meeting with people is, what documentation do I need to determine if I have a claim? And the answer is not always as simple as saying, well, I need X, Y, and Z, because each claim is a little bit different. So as we go through some of the questions that listeners and watchers of the show have brought in, I think we'll go through that process and detail a little bit more about the paperwork.
Okay, well, do me a favor. Tell me a little bit about the map up here. We have it broken down in zones, and I want you to just tell us what's going on
with this
here.
map, you can kind of see there's different colors here. There's the gray, there's the kind of the reddish color, and then you can't really see it too closely, but there is a little bit of yellow right out here. Those are the different zones that people fall into for their categories. And each zone, for example, Sanibel, Captiva Islands, Boca Grande, and the Florida Keys, they're in what they call Zone B. And Zone B has different types of paperwork and document requirements than Zone C. Zone C is that area west of US 41. All up and down, essentially that's the dividing line. You come east of US 41, you're in Zone C. You go west of US 41, you're in Zone D. Now the one thing to notice here is it does just go to the county lines of Lee, Collier, Charlotte, those county lines. So it doesn't include inland into Hendry, Glades, or some of those counties. What happens is each person has what they call a causation requirement. And essentially that's to show that your damages or your loss of business were related to the oil spill. The first way we look at those is what we call a V pattern. That V pattern is showing a down revenue from 2009 to 2010, and then an up revenue again from 2010 to 2011. Now with each zone, the percentages required to show that down revenue change. In Zone C, for example, you have to have downward revenue of 8.5% and upward revenue of 5%. In Zone D, however, that is downward revenue of 15% and upward revenue of 10%. Zone B is a little bit different. Depending on which industry you're in, you may not have to show any causation whatsoever, and we can just look at what they call the variable profit and the variable profit margin. Those numbers, if you're in the tourism industry, which the tourism industry actually encompasses much more than you would think. In fact, it's about a 10 to 12 page listing of companies that are in the tourism industry alone, then you don't have to prove causation at all. Additionally, it's not just damages that are compensatable. There's also other things. If you had a canceled contract, if somebody had a reservation at your hotel, or they had some of those things and they called and said, we've been hearing all of these terrible things on the radio about oil washing up on your beaches. Well, even though oil never did, luckily, wash up on the beaches here in Southwest Florida, that cancellation is also compensatable. So we have some of those things. With regards to each type of business, the documentation, we always start with tax returns. Tax returns for 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, and 2011. We like to accompany those with profit and losses. Profit and losses for the months of May through December of 2010, 2011, 2009, and then that's when we get a little bit more in depth, because I have some people that come in and say, well, my business was terrible in 2009. My business was terrible in 2008. We had a very rough economy here in Southwest Florida during those times. So how do I get, compensated? Well, there's what they call benchmark periods to determine your damages. That benchmark period can be a straight comparison of the year 2009 to the year 2010. It can also be an average of the years 2008 and 2009 to 2010, or it can be an average of 2007, 2008, 2009, comparing it to 2010. So it's not just, hey, I went from one year to the next. It actually encompasses a much broader range. That's oftentimes when I get the question, well, can I file a settlement myself? Why do I need an attorney? Well, there's two reasons in my opinion. Number one is certainly you can file a claim yourself. There's nothing that prevents an individual from submitting a claim. However, I've had multiple businesses that have come to me and they had their claim denied because they didn't have the proper paperwork. Part of that problem is they didn't understand that they could go back until 2007, 2008 and do these averages. The other problem is when you get to a second set of causation, and that's what we call the modified revenue or the modified V pattern. And with that modified V pattern, and especially for startup businesses, it's not only revenue that we take into account, but it's where did your customers come from. So once we pass step one, we look to see what's the address, what's the zip code, where did your customers come from. Because if you show a greater increase in your customers in zones A through C, which again, in Fort Myers, it's zone B out here in Sanibel, and then everything everything west of US 41 that make up zones B and C. So then we look at your customer mix test. And if you had an increase in the percentage of business from these other zones, that also proves causation to give you a claim. So as you can tell, a lot of that is very technical, very legal definitions, and it gets to be quite complicated. In addition to that, you're not only looking at year-to-year comparisons, we're actually zeroing in and focusing on 90-day periods. So within any 90-day period, or it can even be greater, it's not just limited to 90 days, but 90 days is the minimum. You look at individual 90-day periods and comparing them together. So in order to accurately and completely look and determine how much your claim is, you really need somebody that's willing to sit down and analyze every single 90-day period and say, well, should I use 90? Should I use 120? Should I use 150? Should I use 180? Each of those very time frames may make a different claim. It may make more money. It may make less money. It may determine the ratios of whether you've met the revenue mix test. It's not a simple process. The paperwork itself may look, and everybody may say, oh, well, my accountant said I can just fill these things out. But to truly evaluate your claim, it's much more than just saying, yes, here, I'm eligible. BP, you figure out how much money. And I've heard people say that,
right,
that the forms tell me, oh, I can just click a box and let BP tell me how much money. To me, that's, a little bit of the chicken guarding the hen house sometimes. When you let somebody else determine how much money you have, you should have somebody that's at least willing to go through those steps with you and explain those steps to you and say, this is how much we think you're eligible for. The second part of the second reason why I think an attorney is important is there is an appeals process. Not every claim gets granted right away, but there is an appeals process. And to have somebody standing with you to make sure that you have representation during the appeals process is an important step in this. The appeals process doesn't cost a lot of money. It's broken down by how much your claim is, but it ranges from $100 to $500. So even if you have to go to an appeal, you're not paying a lot of money for that. And I think that's the other side that a lot of people say, well, isn't it going to cost me a lot of money? At the Duluth Law Group, it's not going to cost you any out-of-pocket money for us to determine whether or not you have a claim. We're pursuing these claims on a contingency fee basis, so unless you recover money, you don't pay us any fees. So all the work of analyzing the periods and the times, you're not paying for that time. Whereas if you have an accountant or you have somebody else, they're going to charge you for their time typically to do those things. We believe in the customer. We believe in the consumer, and we believe in helping them get what they're due. That's what we're there for. We're going to analyze each of those periods of time to make sure that you get the most money possible.
Thanks, Dave. You hit us with a lot of information, so I'm going to kind of just break it down because we have a lot of questions that are coming in. But before we do that, I want to take a 30-second break, give everybody some time to digest this stuff, go get a drink or maybe some Alka-Seltzer if they have a claim, and come back and see us. So we'll see you in 30 seconds. By the way, if you have questions, please send them questions at DuluthLawGroup.com. We're getting them in from the BP oil spill. That's why I wanted to do a special show on this, just to get the information out to you. Because if you think you might have a claim, it may be worth giving us a call. We'll see you in 30 seconds. Thank you for watching. Have you been injured by a drunk driver? Maybe somebody who was texting while they were driving? Or maybe just somebody who dropped their cell phone and lost control. In a matter of seconds, your life changed. No one chooses to be seriously injured in a car accident, but you do get to choose your attorney. I'm attorney Carmen DeLutri, and I've been helping auto accident victims in Southwest Florida for over 15 years. If you've been seriously injured in a car accident, call my cell phone immediately at 565-0506, and I will be there to assist you. Hello everybody and welcome back to the program. I'm here with Dave Lampley live. Dave is going to go ahead and tell us now, or answer some questions about how exactly you can go ahead and pursue this claim. The first question I got was a young lady from Fort Myers said, Carmen, my business experienced some decline after the spill. I know there are settlements available, but I don't know how to calculate exactly how much I lost or if I'm even eligible. So how would you address that, Dave? Well,
that's kind of the first step in every case. This is where a client will contact us and we ask them to bring in their tax returns and their profit and losses. For those individuals that have QuickBooks or similar accounting software, those profit and losses bring the entire form in that shows all of the cost, all of the expenses, all of those things. Because at that point, we're going to start plugging those numbers in to look to see if you have the proper revenue declines, the proper revenue growth in 2011. That's going to form the basis of what I call step one. Step one is determining whether you have the causation factor. Once we've determined that there is causation, then we're going to move to step two. And step two is determining how much damages or how much compensation you're entitled to. But the beginning with the tax returns and the profit and loss, those are kind of the foundations for the documentation. And for a lot of individuals, it's a matter of printing them out or just getting copies from whatever source they have. So the initial documents that we require are actually, they're not too cumbersome for most people.
They shouldn't be too hard to put together. I mean, if you have a CPA or an accountant, you can ask them to put the numbers together. But like Dave said, if you're a small businessman and you use QuickBooks or some type of accounting software, you could just give us a printout of what those numbers were. And again, the better accounting that you've done probably is going to increase the amount of your claim is if you're eligible to make a claim at all. I have a gentleman in Fort Myers said, my small business failed because of the BP oil spill. Even though I'm out of business, can I still apply for a settlement? And I think we've already addressed that, but can you go in a little more detail on that?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that being one of the categories, and it's compensatable separate. I talked a little bit about having to show revenue growth in 2011. Well, if your business closed, clearly you don't have the revenue growth in 2011. But there's a separate category that we analyze those claims on. Again, we look at the financials. A failed business, one of the really important things is, especially if you have any documentation related to spill-related cancellations, whether you have a contract that you were bidding on that the job stopped, whether you had a reservation that was canceled, those type of things, tours. I also see where a lot of people don't know that they're eligible for a claim is the fairs and the carnivals and the street vendors and some of those things that would come and do the various festivals that we have here in Southwest Florida. Those individuals actually have a claim as well as part of that whole framework, because we didn't have as many people to tour. We didn't have as many people that attended those festivals at the time.
Yeah, thank you. The next question is about collecting all the paperwork seems daunting. Will you help us negotiate the settlement so that we can maximize our claim?
Well, and this is certainly, this is where having the attorney helps you, because we take that initial step, and that initial step is the tax returns and the profit and losses. And then we can identify the zones or the periods of 90, 120, 150 days that we want to zero in on. And so then if we need additional information, we're not asking you for 5 years worth of your invoices or 5 years worth of your customer list. We've been able to narrow it down to this exact time frame to make the process as easy as possible on the consumer or the business owner, because right now we are experiencing a little bit of growth here in Southwest Florida, and things are getting a little bit better. And the business owners that I talk to talk about being busy or busier, which is a great thing. We love to see it. But you also need time to run your business. You need time to be sitting in my office, piling through invoices and credit card receipts and things of that nature. By having us help you through the process, we can narrow it down to those 90 days or 120 days that are relevant to your claim, so that the process isn't so cumbersome, so that you're not missing time doing what you need to do, which is grow your business.
Right. So we have a lot of people in Southwest Florida, like Dave was identifying. He said in the settlement there's like 12 pages of different businesses. But when you think about it, what's unique to our area is that we live and thrive on tourism. So the guys you may not think that have something to do with tourism, like the guy who owns the local driving range.
Well, and I use some examples that I've seen are, security systems.
Yeah.
People that didn't have, and handyman services. Everybody's asked me, well, what does a handyman service have to do with, well, a lot of these handyman services were doing, remodeling. They were on call for the rental units, and they were on call for these seasonal visitors that came in. And because there wasn't seasonal visitors or there weren't tourists coming in and staying in these places, there wasn't the need for the handyman service. So even though you can't draw a direct link between the handyman and tourism, the effects did trickle down, to each of those individuals. So it's not necessarily, oh, I didn't work in the hotel industry or I didn't work in this industry, so how am I compensatable for this? It's the reality of our economy here in Southwest Florida that in large part our economy is based on tourism and all the activities that surround that. The shop owner that didn't have as many tourists down here shopping, well, they suffer a downturn in business. Therefore, they cut the hours of their employees. The employees that have their hours cut don't have as much money to spend on the next level. So all of these things start to kind of pile up on each other. And the fact that we had such a dramatic drop in tourism does trickle down to everybody. So everybody should at least examine their financials to determine whether or not they have a claim.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, we've seen some cases in our office where your first inkling would be like, okay, how does your claim relate to this? Like, for example, a guy who has a mobile car washing business. Yeah. And, when the tourists come down, his business blossoms, and then all of a sudden it retracts after they're gone. And a lot of people down here, or small businessmen, rely on that one seasonal boom to get them over the hump. Now, Dave, I want to switch gears real quick. Okay. There's a lot of people who already made their claims. Are they eligible to come back and say, hey guys, I made a mistake, or the release doesn't provide a way for me to not come back for you? Is this something that they should look at?
Potentially. There was a lot of claim processes before it got consolidated into this court action in Louisiana. You had the VOO program, you had some other deep water settlement funds that were going on. In some cases, the releases that were signed, that prevents you from coming back and having another claim. In other cases, it doesn't. It's a case-by-case basis. There's no magic language that I can have our viewers look at and do it themselves. But just because you had a claim, or more importantly, if you had a claim denied before, because this is an entirely different process. The claims process that they were doing in reviewing the claims before is different than this process. So even if you had a claim denied before, that does not mean that you don't have a claim that's viable currently. Claims that we saw denied before are getting accepted. Right. And so each person has got to look at it and say, well, maybe I need a fresh set of eyes to look at this and determine. One of the good things or comforting things to some degree is that the deadline to file a claim has been essentially extended to at least April of 2014. So you have some time to get that paperwork together. You have some time to get that. You don't feel like you have to have it all in the next week. But it's important the sooner you get going, the sooner you get into this process, because there has been an appeal filed and some of this stuff. So you want to get this process started so that it doesn't drag on for years and years and years.
Correct. And what I want to do now is just say thank you again for watching the show. I really appreciate it. If you have questions, please send them to us at questions@delutrylawgroup.com. We'd love to answer them on the show. Let's take another 30-second break. We'll come back. We got a lot more to talk to you about this bill. So I'll see you in 30 seconds. Thanks for watching. I'm attorney Carmen DeLutri. Over the past 12 years, we've had the pleasure of serving the people of Southwest Florida. We've taken on some of the largest insurance companies, mortgage companies, and credit card companies for our clients. Now we have offices throughout Southwest Florida, and our mission has not changed. We help individuals with personal injury, wrongful death, bankruptcy, or foreclosure defense cases. If you would like a free initial consultation in the area of personal injury, wrongful death, foreclosure defense, or bankruptcy, call us today. Yeah, one of the, oh, by the way, thanks for coming back. I just got into where I was going here. Magic of live TV, sorry about that. Anyway, one of the things we talk about a lot in our office is whether or not we can educate people on filing the claims themselves. And I'll be honest with you folks, a lot of people went out and filed the claims on their own. And they're bringing them to us saying, hey, did I get everything I was entitled to? Unfortunately, I have to tell them, no, you didn't, or you did something wrong, or maybe you could have gotten more had you done something else. That's one of the big fears I have with this because, a lot of people are going crazy. I mean, I've heard there's a law firm from Ohio soliciting clients in Florida trying to get, their cases. To me, that's insanity. If you want to have a relationship with an attorney, you have to have, it's got to be based upon mutual trust. It can't be based upon an advertisement or something like that. Most of the clients who've come to us so far were already clients of ours. Say, Carmen, help us with this. Dave, help me with this. I got turned down. I talked to a business owner in Naples. He prepackaged his own claim. He sent it in. I looked at it. To me, he did almost everything right. He had about 90% of it right. It got kicked out. What did he do? He put it on the shelf, said, oh, I guess I'm not entitled to a claim. After talking to me, I said, no, you're bonkers. You need to resubmit that. He talked to me. We've got it already packaged up, and we're ready to send that one in. And ultimately, he's probably going to get back double what he originally requested at the first time. So in a way, I'm glad that they denied his claim. And there's a lot of people out there. Now, one thing I want to talk about is the employees, Dave, because he had about 5 employees at the time. Now, is it possible that those people could make a claim once his claim is eligible?
Certainly, that's one of the things, we talk about causation and we talk about zones and we talk a lot about, determining where you're at. But if you're an employee of a place or a business or a firm that has gotten a BP spill settlement, then you don't have to prove causation because you're presumed to have suffered damages because if the business suffered damages, the employees suffered damages and it's related to the spill as well. Also, there's a presumption, restaurants, tourism industry in those zones. So those employees of a business. So it's important to ask, if you're an employee, if you're an individual, ask your employer, did we file a BP spill claim? Did the business get compensated for a BP spill claim? because that's going to presume that you're eligible as an employee of that business to file a claim. One thing I did want to touch on real quickly is Carmen started talking about these denied claims and the individuals. Well, one of the things, and we mentioned it, but I think it's very important to talk about, is within these time frames, within these years, you have 90-day periods, you have 120-day periods, you have 180-day periods, and you can go back 2009, 2008, and 2007. So when you're looking at that, potentially there's multiple formulas or time frames, or when you're on live TV, that word just cannot come to your head. But there's, let's say the best thing for you is to look at 2007, 2008, 2009, average that. But that's for one 30-day period. But if we look at the 90-day period, if we look at the next 90-day period, maybe it's better only to use 2009, or maybe it's better to use 8 and 9. Or maybe it's better to take a 120-day period and average 8 and 9 together. So as you start looking at those things, those are the difficult things. Those are the things that a lot of people need assistance with, because to truly analyze a claim, you should look at every potential 90-day period. You should look at all three of the periods, 07, 08, and 09, to determine what's the best for you. So it's not as simple as saying, here, I'm going to throw all my paperwork and send it off to BP. It's better to look at each of those 90 days to determine what's better for you.
Thanks, Dave. And again, we talked a little bit about how long you have to file your claim. If you think you have a legitimate claim, you need to start processing the claim now, because April of 2014 is going to come really fast. And it's only 14 months away, or 13 months away, because we're at the end of February already almost. So the reason why we say that is because I don't want people coming to me March of 2014 saying, Carmen, I need to process my claim. Where do I start?
And because the paperwork is, and doing that analysis and doing all of those numbers, it's not something that you turn around and say, well, I'm going to do it in 24 hours or 48 hours.
It's not going to happen.
To properly look at your claim, it does take some time. So waiting to the last minute may put you in a crunch that hurts your case overall.
Folks, I call this show the fastest 30 minutes in TV, and quite frankly, we've done it again. Before we go, Dave, I just want to say thank you for all your information. Folks, if you have any questions, please call our office, 939-0900. Set up a free consultation. It doesn't hurt. We can even do phone consultations where you can call in, set a time, an attorney will call you back. If I don't get a few more things on the air, Bridget's going to kill me. Next month's book is going to be Have a Little Faith by Mitch Albom. Who doesn't need a little bit of faith in these times? Secondly, if you don't connect with us on Facebook, you're missing the boat, because we're doing a lot of stuff out there to help people out with, just kind of crazy stuff. We put videos on there, we do everything. Dave Lampley, Carmen Dellutri, Dellutri Law Group. You need us, you call us. Have a good day.